Today, if you think New Zealand housing is bad, you ain't seen nothing yet. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics, working at this post covering finance and property news with a distinctively Australian and New Zealand flavour. And in recent weeks I've been focusing in on New Zealand property because there's a certain madness afoot there, with prices rising, rates very low, and many people thinking that the crisis is bubbling up. However, if New Zealand politicians thought the housing crisis in 2020 was bad, the worst is yet to come, warns a new report by the New Zealand Initiative. In The Need to Build, the demographic drivers of housing demand, research assistant Leonard Hong modelled 36 scenarios and found that New Zealand's population gets older and larger by 2038. And in fact, Hong calculated that the number of additional dwellings needed would reach between 26,246 and 34,556 annually under the most plausible scenarios. And this excludes the annual housing replacement and demolition rate and the current 40,000 undersupply calculated by Infometrics. Historical data tells us that only 21,445 new houses have been built in New Zealand annually since 1992. This is nowhere enough to accommodate our growing population, says Hong. For the next 20 years, even with zero net migration, we still need to build close to 20,000 dwellings annually to keep up with population changes. Policymakers should stop blaming the housing crisis on land banking investment and speculation, and find policy solutions to drastically expand housing supply to keep up with demographic changes. Demographic changes will also have adverse effects on our prospects for fiscal prudence. The report demonstrates that the number of those over 65 years will be up by at least 23% in 2060. This means fewer future taxpayers and more pressure on working-age New Zealanders to fund public services such as healthcare and education. Our future is an older and larger New Zealand, and we must start preparing for it, says Leonard Hong. We need to make a growing and ageing New Zealand a livable place for New Zealanders, and this starts by building more houses now. Otherwise, future generations will have to deal with terrible housing affordability prospects. This report should be a wake-up call for government, concludes Leonard Hong. And I was fortunate enough to catch up with Leonard, and we discussed this report in more detail. Hi, Leonard.
Hi, Martin. How are you?
Very good, and thank you very much for spending some time with us. Now, you're about to release a report, it's coming out tomorrow, on the future of New Zealand housing, and I've had a quick read through it, and basically you're sounding a very significant alarm.
Yes, I am. I mean, the housing crisis in New Zealand has been going on for a long, long time, right? And the prospects for, I'm a Gen Z person, by the way, the prospects for getting an affordable house for a person like me is getting extremely difficult. In comparison to median income and median prices, the price has just gone through the roof, right? What my paper is covering is the fact that as New Zealand gets older, the prospects for the Kiwi dream is dwindling away.
Yeah, and in fact, home ownership has been steadily declining as a proportion of the population for a decade or more.
That's right. Yeah, it's at about 65%, so it's still well over the majority, which is why it's difficult for politicians to try to properly tackle that problem.
Right, but the fact, of course, is that most people will, or more people have got mortgages, and the mortgages have got bigger because house prices have got so high. And it also means that a lot of people trying to get into the market have to extend themselves with even bigger mortgages, and so affordability is pretty chronic even now.
No, that's right. You're absolutely right. And the status quo will definitely make it worse.
So what do you think the root cause is? Is it policy failure, or is it just we haven't built enough, or is there something else going on?
I mean, the housing market is probably one of the most complicated things in the country right now. I think a lot of people have no idea where to even begin, right? But I think when you think about it now, there's political elements. There's also poor policy, but it's the political buck passing. The Labour government under Helen Clark could have done something about it. John Key could have done something about it. Jacinda Ardern is trying to a certain degree. In my report, I praise former Housing Minister Phil Twyford for his supply side agenda. The National Policy Statement on Urban Development means that we are able to sprawl up more and intensify around the urban areas. And also the Infrastructure Funding and Finance Act, which passed last year in June, will pay off in the long run. So there has been some good change, but it's just not reflected in the house prices.
Right, and of course we saw house prices rocket away over the last few months as interest rates got cut by the Reserve Bank in New Zealand. A lot of momentum from first-time buyers and a lot of investors also, despite the fact that net migration is negative at the moment.
No, that's the shocking thing, is that even with net migration of zero, prices have gone up by 20%. And the reason is obviously the Reserve Bank of New Zealand's quantitative easing programs and also low interest rates. When you have low interest rate, you incentivize people to get mortgages and borrow more money.
And your projections are that migration will in fact come back and will be a very significant driver of future demand.
Well, it's not just that. I mean, for the next 20 years, for instance, in one of my projections, let's say hypothetically in an alternative universe, New Zealand decides to completely shut its border. Seriously, we tried it. We simulated it, right? We cut net migration to zero for the next 20 years, and despite that, New Zealand still needs to build 20,000 new homes annually, and that's on top of the demolition and the replacement of houses, and also the current undersupply that's ongoing at the moment.
Right, so just to be clear, even without more migration, there is not enough property being built to meet even local demand.
That's right.
Right. And is that true across the whole country, or is it an Auckland thing?
No, it's across the whole country. I mean, if you just look at the numbers that Kate, I think, I forgot her name specifically, but one of the journalists covered the fact that with a region building more, the housing inflation has been lower. When you look at regions like Hamilton, even Christchurch, the housing inflation is far lower, whereas in areas such as Auckland and Wellington, where we haven't been able to build at all, it's far higher. The housing inflation is far quicker.
Right. Okay. Right. So it's a national issue rather than a local issue. Now, of course, you're a think tank. Are you paid by the building and construction sector?
No. We're just paid by our members, and they give us the intellectual freedom to look into problems in the policy, such as local government problems, housing, infrastructure, foreign direct investment. We're just thinkers, and I'm privileged to be a part of that institution myself.
Yeah, no, it's great. And, I think it's really important to get objective, independent, data-driven analysis because, frankly, there's a lot of spruiking across the property sector, in Australia and in New Zealand at the moment. So it's good to get some really firm data, and the report looks pretty amazing to me. What do you think the number one recommendation should be to tackle this?
Well, people think that housing and local government is not related at all. They're both separate problems. In fact, they're all connected. Is that the problem is that local councils and local governments in New Zealand do not want to build more housing because they are the ones that incur the costs and the liability. Whereas central government take all the tax revenue, right? Income taxes, corporate taxes, GST, they take everything. Seriously, New Zealand has one of the most centralized forms of governance systems in the world. 90% of our tax revenue goes to Wellington. So it's about giving incentives to councillors and local government officials to want to build. And we see this in examples across international space, right? Look at Houston, Texas. You can buy a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom, massively mansion with a swimming pool and 1,000 square foot backyard for $200,000 USD near the middle of the CBD. I mean, can we do that? Yes, we can. So one of the policies that I don't recommend policies in my paper. This is about the urgency. But what we could do is just to give the GST rebates to councils. Just decentralize some of that proportion of tax revenue down to the local level. And that might do some good in my view. It's worked in Germany, it's worked in Switzerland, so why not here?
And what about planning regulations? Do you think they're actually still too restrictive?
Well, the RMA has been horrible for development for the last few decades, right? I mean, it undermines property rights, it fosters the NIMBYism across the urban areas. So, but the point is, Martin, is that even if we had the RMA, if we incentivize councils to want to torpedo that and just build regardless, we would have a very affordable housing market. I mean, seriously, in Germany, 70% of the tax laws are written there. Like the world tax laws are written in Germany. They have one of the worst planning laws in Europe, and yet they're able to have very affordable housing. So why can't we? It doesn't matter if we have the RMA, or it doesn't matter if we torpedo the RMA and replace it with 3 different laws. It's about the incentives to councils to want to build urban sprawl and allow land supply available and build infrastructure like pipelines and libraries and schools, you name it.
Right, so the fundamental question then is the relationship between central government and local government, and who makes the decisions and how the incentive structures work. And what you're basically saying is it's all in the wrong order.
Correct. It's a complete, what I call a misalignment of interests. They don't trust each other. Like, I talk to New Zealand politicians here on the ground, and they tell me, oh, Leonard, local councils are not efficient. They don't know how to do things. And I tell them, well, if they are indeed incompetent, what's the best way to solve that? Is to incentivize them to want to be competent so they can serve the interests of the community and build more housing and allow land available. In Germany, for instance, they had a stagnant population of 80 million, right? But the number of households that were formed in 1990 was 35 million. 2020, it was 42 million. So they needed to build 7 million more houses to accommodate that population age. That's the scary thing.
So what you're saying is that there is actually this demographic shift means we're going to have more households. There might be smaller households, but there are going to be more of them. And that essentially means we need different types of property to meet that significant demand.
Yeah, but that's up to the property developers, right? I mean, personally, I like the urban cities. I want to live in an apartment. I want to live in high-rising areas, right? But there are Kiwis that love that Kiwi dream lifestyle. The 3-4 bedroom backyard thing. Look, go ham. Go and live near the urban peripheries. That's fine. You can do that. Start like having children and having family. That's fine. But it's about allowing people that want to live somewhere, like just letting people build homes where they want to live. It's as simple. Just maximize the utility for everybody. That's it.
Sounds like so simple when you say it like that.
Politics, Martin. Politics and incentive.
Indeed. So some time for some joined up thinking, some different thinking, and I want to congratulate you on the report. I think it's a very good read. I'll put a link below, and people will be able to see for themselves.
Oh, it's an absolute honor to be on your program, Martin. So thank you very much for inviting me here.
Good to talk to you, and thank you very much for spending the time with us.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Goodbye.